Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca,
I'm Landon.
and this is a very special conference predictions update episode of Mormonish. We released an episode of Mormonish last week on Friday with all of our conference predictions that were sort of aggregated from posts from all of you on social media. And it was an awesome episode. I hope that you guys will check that out. We're including that link in the show notes. But because of late breaking information in the news today, we are amending some of our predictions. And that's what this episode is all about. So, Landon, why don't you tell us what is happening?
All right. Well, we've had two big news stories that have come up that could play into this, and one of them is really quite large. But I want to start with the first one here. So I'm going to start out with the first one, and both of them involve the Utah legislature. The first one is social media restrictions for teens signed into law by Utah governor. And if you remember, we did predict that social media might be one of the things that that the church would come out and try to limit. And of course, we know that the Utah legislature is just another arm of the church, and they've signed into law a law that limits social media to teenagers. Teenagers can now no longer in the state of Utah sign up for an account on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube without their parents' permission. It requires an ID now to sign up for those social media platforms. And then there's some really weird restrictions. If the parent allows them to get on there, they can't use it between the hours of 10:30 p.m. and 6 a.m., I believe, is the hours that they can't use.
What is the point of that?
Media.
That's when everyone uses social media.
Yeah, isn't that you're laying in bed
Those
waiting
are the
to
peak
go
hours.
to sleep, and you start checking all your messages. Yep. So
I know what the point of that is. I'm just saying.
yes, we all know what the point of it is. But and the parents also have to be able to see the parents also have to be able to see the kids' messages, and any of they can log into their accounts at all times. So they're always going to be able to see those things. So they've really made it tough for the kids to do anything without being monitored by the kids. And TikTok is another one of those, which I think you specifically said in the update that would be something that they would try to limit. And
Yeah,
we
that was
all
my
know why
prediction.
that might be.
Yeah, that was my prediction that they would really focus on parents watching their children's social media. And so now they don't even really have to make that announcement at conference because they basically worked through the legislature here in Utah to take care of that right there, right? Now the parents are omnipotent and omnipresent, and they can completely control what their kids do. And of course, I understand the flip side of it. It's important, to make sure that your children are safe and okay. But I just think the timing is very interesting when a lot of post-Mormon information is just going crazy on social media, especially TikTok. Here we have legislation to make sure that your children, without your permission, can never, ever go on those sites. However, I think kids, being kids, are going to come up with some workarounds. Don't you agree?
They always do, and the parents get tired of overseeing them and let their guard down, it seems like. But again, it's just another case of the church controlling the message that they want through the legislature. I still think there'll probably be a talk where they talk about social media and encourage the parents now to monitor that and to get on board with the law.
No, they might even mention the law. That's true. Maybe that's our new prediction. They might even mention the law. So very interesting. Okay, that's a good one.
That's a good one. The second one is really quite a big story that just came out, and this is really the reason that we decided we needed a special episode. This just on Newsweek. It actually came from an AP article. China using the Mormon Church to influence U.S. politics investigation finds. This is it's a small story in print, but it is a huge story in content of what it really is. Basically, what's happened is China is, as we all know, there's a lot of tension right now between China and the U.S., and China has no influence over the over Congress right now. There's such strain there that they have no ends in U.S. politics. So what they've decided to do is that they want to get ends at the lower levels of politics in the U.S. And so they decided to go in and try to have influence at the state level. And what better state to pick out if you want to have influence than Utah? Now, Utah is not an important state, you would think, for most countries. But if you're going to identify a state that you can easily target to take control of a legislature or have influence, it's Utah. It's completely controlled by the Mormon Church. The Mormon Church wants to get its missionaries in China. It wants to build a temple. In fact, they've announced a temple there that everyone's going, how in the heck are you going to build a temple in China? And so they've gone after Utah, and they've invited the Utah legislative body has been sending groups over there to tour different business factories under economic tours. A lot of Utah schools have done Chinese language. The language school, they do a
immersion programs,
Chinese immersion program.
Yep.
And President Xi sent a letter to one of the schools. They sent a happy birthday letter to him, and he sent a letter back, and they sent like press over, and they did cameras, and then they went back and they did a big press thing. Oh, Utah schools say welcome Grandpa Z, and so they made a big production out of that. And they've actually got a professor at Weber State University who says he's not related to the Chinese, although he's brokering a lot of deals between the Chinese and trying to get the ambassador into different things with the Utah legislature. And he just happened to have joined the church and is in the same ward as I think it's the Senate President, Stewart. So the FBI has been interviewing several of the different Utah legislators regarding.
That's a hard word. We're having trouble with that.
They've been interviewing a lot of the legislators about these different interfaces that they've been having. But really, these Chinese, basically spies, are joining the church and trying to have influence, to get influence through Utah, through the church, to get the pressure onto onto LDS senators, onto LDS congressmen, to put pressure to get what China would like to have.
And then it kind of goes from there. Yeah. No, and you can see that they have something Utah really wants, and that is access. I mean, China is the golden goose, right? We've always heard that someday we'll get into China. In fact, I had a friend, I went out to lunch a couple of years ago, and she's like, did you hear what happened to my cousin's nephew's uncle? And I'm like, no. She's like, he got his mission call, and when he opened it, there was nothing on it except for a phone number. And he called the phone number. Of course, this was several years ago, and it was President Monson, and he was being called to China. So there's always been, this idea that this is going to happen. And of course, like you said, the temple has already been announced. And so, how are we going to have that happen? It's got to happen. And what I thought was very interesting is that earlier in the day, there was the first article that we became aware of, and that was from the AP.
Yep.
And it basically just said China finds unlikely friends in Utah, and it was just a story about what you were just talking about, that how interesting, there seems to be this, I'll scratch my back, you scratch your, no, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. That's right. And so that article came out this morning. Everyone was kind of interested in that. Then later in the day, the title we just saw, which is China is trying to influence politics through this workaround, this backdoor of Utah. So it's interesting, basically the same story, but the headline is kind of more commentary on that. So I think what we're going to add as a prediction, don't you think, Landon?
Yep.
Is, how should we say it? Do we want to go as far as saying that they will actually announce the location of the temple in China? Or will there just be some more talk about moving forward into China? What do you think?
Well, I think they've already announced a location in China. I thought they announced it a couple of years
Maybe
ago.
they did, but
Everyone
no
was
one
saying,
knew what they
how's
were
that going to
talking
be
about.
done? So
Yeah, nobody knew what they were talking about.
I think, that remember last conference where President Nelson said, oh, the power of the Lord will in days coming forth will be shown
Oh,
forth. I think
yes.
that they may have worked some deals, gotten friendly, and China was going to let them in, and that was going to be the power of the Lord's hand, and they were possibly going to make some announcement that was going to go forth, and that was going to be the miracle. Now, I don't know with this revelation of this influence if they can now release that. That
That's
would
the
look
problem.
very
Yeah, no,
problematic if they released it, but that could
the
have been
initial
one
article was great, right? It said great, friendly, but then the second article is like, we see what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's very clear. So no, that's true. And I also, of course, this all goes along with our prediction of a giant announcement as a smoke screen because of the SEC ruling that everybody's still talking about. And, in our previous episode that we released Friday of our predictions, we tried to come up, maybe change the mission program. Maybe, all of that pales in comparison to an announcement of the actual beginning of a building of the temple in China. That would just blow everybody's minds.
Opening of a mission in China.
Or the opening of a mission in China.
Two things they would lose their minds. They would
lose their collective, what.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's why we kind of made this little short episode to amend the prediction and say that Landon and I believe that China may somehow factor into conference at some point. And there it is, unless the PR between now and then gets progressively worse, like the second article that says, you're trying to influence maybe then, but I don't know. That never stopped him before. So,
but I'm going to make one last prediction.
Okay, go ahead.
Ezra Taft Benson is turning in his grave right now.
Oh, that is true. Communist China. Oh my goodness. Well, perhaps he was only speaking of as a man when he was saying all that anti-communist rhetoric back in the 60s and 70s. I don't know what to think, but it just couldn't get any crazier. So again, leave your predictions in the comments or tell us what you think about the idea that China may somehow factor into conference this weekend. Will there be a mission open in China? Will someone get a mission call, and when they open it, there's only a phone number there? I'm sorry, that was the weirdest lunch. I was like, yeah, okay. Maybe, but anyway, lots of intrigue.
Maybe Jason Bourne will be called to China. Who knows?
That's it. Something. I don't know. Or you know what? Maybe we're just desperately hoping there will be anything interesting that happens. I don't know. I think that's what a lot of, when we all used to be more on the faithful side, it was like, oh, please let something happen. There has to be something.
Probably our first prediction of the whole episode. It's going to be boring.
Yes. In our previous episode, if you watch that, we did read a direct quote from somebody on social media that said it will be boring, period. So that also could happen. But I'm just, I just, the level of excitement that any announcement having to do with China would elicit is just, I don't think we can even imagine.
It would really
blow. Of course, it is also April Fool's. So that, at least one of the days. So that's a problem too. How will we know if it's accurate or not? I don't know.
Wow, Are they speaking of the man, or is it April Fool's?
Is it April Fool's? I don't know. But I will tell you this, Landon and I are going to go to Temple Square, I think on Sunday. Of course, we couldn't get tickets. No one can get tickets. We don't have any hookups. If you have any hookups, call us. But we are just going to be there, soaking up the ambiance, probably going to brunch. Maybe we'll shoot, if there's anything interesting going on. If we hear a giant shout coming out of the conference center, China, maybe we'll see if we can film that. Anyway, we'll try to do something. So
maybe we should go for Chinese food.
And then we'll go out for Chinese food. That could happen too. So anyway, we'll see. But leave your predictions. Tell us what you think about this whole China thing unfolding. I'm sure there'll be more information as the week goes on. So let us know what y'all think. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share.
You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.